Hi everyone, welcome to or back to my channel. My name is Shea and I've been living in Bologna, Italy for 2 years now studying Italian. So today's video is going to be a chatty video because I want to talk about my experience studying abroad during university and then how that inspired me to now live here in Italy. Because I know a lot of people are also very interested in moving abroad, especially if they've already studied abroad, they feel really connected to the place they studied and they'd love to eventually move there in the future. So I wanted to share a little bit about my story and how I made it happen in case you also would love to move abroad. So here are some tips as well as a little backstory. Back in 2018, I studied abroad in Rome just for 1 semester, so about 4 to 5 months. I studied communications and film, and my classes were in English, and then I had one very basic Italian language class that only lasted a few weeks. I really enjoyed Rome. I was there from January until May, and at the time, that was considered low season, so there weren't a lot of tourists and I really got to enjoy the city. I had wonderful experiences traveling around Italy. I made some amazing friends and I just felt really at home there. Studying abroad was a really life-changing experience for me. So when it came time to leave, I was actually devastated. A lot of the other people in my program were so ready to go home, but I was like, I'd rather stay. So I always had it in the back of my mind that one day I wanted to return to Italy to actually live here. And of course, I wanted to actually be able to speak the language. Fast forward to graduating, I graduated early. So I ended up graduating in December of 2018. So literally later that year. But unfortunately, I did not find a job right out of college. It was very difficult and really disheartening not to find something. So I ended up leaving Los Angeles, where I went to university, and moved back home to Arizona. And I really struggled to find a job, but I kept making YouTube videos because I felt like it was a nice way to experiment with my creativity and do something that I really enjoyed and was passionate about while I was still searching for jobs. While I was job searching, since I did have a lot of free time, I felt very inspired to start learning Italian. I think the main thing that fueled me was I saw Nathaniel Drew's video about learning Italian in 7 days. That totally inspired me. I love him as a creator, and it inspired me to make my video about trying to learn Italian in a month. So doing that first challenge, which I posted on my channel, which probably many of you found me through that video because it is the most popular video on my channel. But during that period of my life, it was very difficult because I was not finding a job. I was doing interviews and getting rejected or just never hearing back. But finally, my mom encouraged me to just make the move back to LA, give myself a few months to find something. And so then I went back to LA for a summer. I found super cheap accommodation for the summer. It was this tiny room, like shoebox room, that I shared with another girl who is now one of my best friends. And I literally couldn't even open my closet door all the way because it would hit my bed. So, but since I still had free time, I continued studying Italian while I was there, but also just to like give me something to do and give me some sort of purpose, because that point in my life was not a very good one. I was not feeling good at all. I still wasn't finding work, was feeling very down on myself. Then literally the last day of living in that apartment, when the day I had to move out, I finally got offered a contract position as a social media manager. And I moved in with my half sister and I slept on her couch for like, I don't even remember, maybe a month or more before I had enough saved to go find a real place. So, you know, we all got to start somewhere. Then I had been working for a bit. I finally moved and I shared basically an apartment with like 3 other people because in LA it's impossible to live on your own. And suddenly I remember seeing that the video that I had posted about the 1-month challenge of learning Italian started to blow up. Like, out of nowhere. It was literally months later after I posted it, suddenly it just took off. So people really enjoyed watching my experience learning Italian, and so I decided to continue documenting my journey of learning, and also was very motivating because now people were watching me, so I felt like I had to keep studying, you know? Eventually, I got hired at a big creative agency in LA. That made it a lot harder to continue studying just because my commute was very long, the work was a lot more demanding, and I really didn't have as much time to study Italian. But then my videos kind of became more about how to study while having a full-time job or while doing something else, like how you can fit studying into a really busy routine. However, after working at this job, which I mentioned was very demanding and just I didn't have a lot of free time to do anything else with my life, I knew that I wanted to go back to Italy because I knew I wanted another experience there. and I think I just wanted a different way of life for myself. So I started researching options knowing that it wasn't something that would happen right away, but I at least needed to plan in advance. I started researching ways that I could get there. So I looked at work visas. I started trying to look for jobs in Italy, and of course that was that was not happening. Employment, like digital nomad options, but then ultimately I decided that the easiest one would be the student visa to go study Italian in Italy, which was fine because I obviously wanted to work on my Italian anyway, so it worked out. Then COVID hit, and I had no idea when I would actually be able to move to Italy because I was getting really worried seeing that COVID was lasting a lot longer than we all thought. And I was just seeing my dream of Italy like get further and further away. And I really had no idea when I would be able to go. But in a way, it kind of helped because it gave me more time to save up a lot more money, really have a set plan in place. I knew I wanted to go for a long amount of time, so I still had to sell a bunch of my stuff, sell my car, basically all these loose ends tied up before I left. So it's not a process that you can just decide, oh, in a few months I want to leave. Like I gave myself probably a year and a half, 2 years at least of planning and preparing because there is very limited information out there. So it can be really hard to figure out what you actually need to do, the documents you need, how it's going to go. So that's why in this section, I do want to talk about the process for me, how it works, and if you also want to come to Italy on a study visa. This is my experience. Remember that I did apply about 2 years ago now, so maybe some things have changed, and it will also differ by consulate. I actually did make a video going over this before, so I'll put it up above so you can check that out. It details more about the prep and planning that I did before moving, then as well as documents and other things that are needed. So that video might be a little bit more detailed if you want to check that out. First, no matter what type of visa you want to get, you will need to make an appointment with your consulate, or there are some consulates that allow you to mail in your documents and everything that's needed. However, I needed to go to the Italian embassy in Los Angeles. I keep mixing up consulate and embassy, and I don't really know what the difference is, but like you get what I mean. Anyway, so I went to the embassy in Los Angeles because that was the like jurisdiction of where I needed to go. So it also includes like Arizona. So sometimes your nearest embassy might not even be in your state, which is frustrating. Luckily for me, it was like a 40-minute drive. Yes, check online because sometimes you are able to actually just mail in your documents. You don't have to worry about an appointment. But if you do need to make an appointment, make it in advance because they fill up really quick. I think especially now that people are traveling again and need visas. When I did it, I was like the tail end of COVID stuff, so people weren't really traveling as much, so there wasn't as much of like a backup of appointments. So my recommendation is to find the appointment first, like set your appointment date and do it a month or two in advance. So that way you have time to collect all of your documents. Also, don't set your appointment date like a week before you leave because I'll get into it later, but you don't want to rush anything. I think there's a certain amount of time you need to have your appointment like within 90 days of leaving, 60 to 90 days maybe. So obviously you can't get your visa like a year before you're supposed to go, but don't cut anything too close. That's my advice. I think I basically booked my appointment 2 months away. So that way I just had plenty of time to collect all the documents that I needed. To know what documents you need, you have to check your embassy or consulate's website and it will list out, well, it'll list out the documents that you need. I say it like this because I feel like it's just classic anything Italian. You show up and they're like, well, where's this document? And I'm like, that wasn't on the list of things you needed. So basically just get more than you think you need. But the general idea is that you need documentation from your school, about the school, a letter saying that you were accepted, proof of tuition payment, because you will need to pay all of it in advance. You can't pay as you go, which is frustrating upfront to pay all of that money because language schools are expensive. You need to have health insurance coverage. I used WAI because they have student health insurance that meets the coverage requirements. You need certain financial documents, basically proving that you have enough finances to cover your stay. This for me had to be a bank letter, not just a statement. I had to actually go to my bank and have a letter from someone there stating my balance and stating that I was in good standing with the bank. Then you need to have housing for the entire period of your stay. So this could be an apartment that you've rented, or it can even just be like a hospitality agreement if you know someone there who's willing to help you out. Round trip flights, so that way they know you're going to eventually leave Italy and you won't just stay there. There's also a visa form that you have to fill out, and then photos for your visa, as well as the fees for the visa itself. And this usually is done in the form of a money order, so you have to prepare that ahead of time as well. Like when I went to the bank to get my letter, I also just asked for a money order as well. And the fees, the current fees, will be listed on the website, so you know exactly how much you'll have to pay. Also, if you're like me and you want to go to an Italian language school, this doesn't apply if you're going to university, but if you're going specifically to learn Italian, you will need to show some proof that you already have an intermediate level of Italian, because they actually don't let complete beginners get a student visa, because the reasoning is like, you can learn the basics here, but you go to Italy when you actually need that extra advanced level that you aren't able to achieve here in the US. Los Angeles is notoriously very strict about this. I was able to get by with a B1. So in my school letter, the director wrote that that I'm coming in at a level of B1 in Italian. But I think now when I've talked to certain people, they said like it has to be even B2, which I think is just wild, because at that point it's like already hard to get a B1 level, which I don't even think I was confidently B1 at that time. I think it was like barely B1. I think it's a little bit of a ridiculous rule, but you can either have a certificate from like an online test, or some schools on their websites, they will have a test that you can take, so that way you can get a certificate to include in your visa. Or in my case, it was totally fine just having the school director write in my letter what level I was entering in. But I've also talked with other people, and some consulates accept A2. So it really just depends. And unfortunately, they don't make it very clear on the website when I said about the things that need to be listed. So I think that your best bet is to just try to go for at least B1 or B2. And the documentation about your school in Italy has to actually come from Italy, because all of your documents need to be original. So keep that in mind as well, because you will need to get those original documents sent to you. So that could add extra time to your document collection. And also, I mean, make sure that the school that you want to go to can offer student visas, because they have to be accredited by some certain, I don't know, Ministry of Education or something like that, but they will know. Like you can reach out to the school and say, hey, are you able to give like long-term visas? And the school will say yes, but the school cannot guarantee that your visa will get approved, because sometimes they get denied for whatever reason and it's not the school's fault. But usually they will refund you for, the tuition, since you can't come, but there might be some other administrative fees that they won't be able to refund you. Then once I finally received everything, I made multiple copies of everything, because also when you get to Italy, there's more documents that you need to show. So just make sure that you have copies of all these original documents, since they'll take those, and you want to have basically records of all these things. And when you go to your appointment, make sure you have everything organized and ready. The appointment, at least in Los Angeles, was very scary, because the people there are so intense and like so mean just right away. I think they deal with a lot of people who don't have documents, or they're just unorganized, so they're not very nice to you. Especially the security guard was like so rude to me. I just walked in the door and he was already mean. So you just have to have patience and just realize that like they're probably not going to be the friendliest, but you'll get through it. Then once they looked through all my documents and I was like having a panic attack, then they said, okay, so you can just come by next week to pick up your visa. And I was like, a specific day? Or she just said 1 week, just come back. I was like, okay. So they give you like a little ticket and then you come back. I just came back exactly 1 week later, because again, she didn't give me a specific time. So I was like, okay. I brought back the ticket, and then you go pick up your passport, because you leave it with them and it has the visa in it. In Los Angeles, it took about a week. And I think even when I studied abroad in Rome, it was about a week or two. I think Los Angeles is pretty fast, but like I said, this was a few years ago, so who knows if things have been delayed. And I don't know how other consulates or embassies, how their wait times are. So give yourself at least a few weeks. Again, don't book your flight like a few days after your appointment, because chances are you won't get your visa by then. And then there's also the option to leave a prepaid envelope with them, so that way they can send your passport back to you in the mail. So this is a good option, like I said, if you live out of state and you can't easily come back to the embassy, you can just have them mail it to you. And then I got mine a week later, and then I think I still had a few weeks until I actually left for Italy. Then, long story short, I fell in love with Italy all over again, specifically Bologna, and I've been here now for 2 years. I originally just applied for a visa that was for 6 months of studying here, but pretty much after like month 2, I already knew that I wanted to stay here much longer. So I was already ready to go through the whole renewal process. I have renewed my student visa multiple times, so that is possible as well. If you want to continue studying, you can definitely do that. Now I'm personally going through the process for dual citizenship because about a year after arriving here, I found out that I actually am eligible for dual citizenship because of my Italian ancestry, which I previously thought I wasn't eligible, but surprise, I am. So that's the process I'm working through now. I have another video explaining that, but it's gonna take a long time and a lot of money. And I post vlogs about my life here in Italy if you're curious to know more about what it's like actually living here. Just remember, it's not always the picture perfect life that you see influencers posting about. It can be really challenging sometimes. I have meltdowns all the time. It's very, very difficult, but for me, it's really worth it and really beautiful. It's a really beautiful experience. So if you had a similar experience studying abroad and you also would love to move to that country or another country, I highly recommend pursuing that dream. It can be difficult, but if you really take the time to prepare, you can definitely do it, and I promise it's so worth it. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you found it helpful, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos, and I will see you all again in the next one.